Heyo, what's going on, everybody? It is episode 218 of the Audible Farm podcast, and it's a solo episode. This week's episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee, the best coffee in all of Iowa. That's right, Couchtown Coffee is located right here in Iowa. They roast coffee specifically for you. They'll ship it to your house. All you have to do is go to their website, find a coffee you like, make an order. When you do, let them know Audible Farm sent you, and they'll give you 20% off. Why? Because Couchtown Coffee is that awesome. Thanks, Couchtown. This week's episode is also brought to you by the patrons on Patreon. The patrons over on the Patreon channel have been supporting this podcast for months. And I just want to say thank you guys very much for supporting the podcast each and every month. $1 a month. Patrick, Nate, Eric, Vincent, Ronley, Andy, Abby, Matt, Harold, Justin, Travis, the McAllister Hours podcast, and American Made Music, the band. There's a lot of people that have been supporting the podcast, and I just want to say thank you all very, very, very much for doing everything that you've done. I really do appreciate you guys doing what it is that you've done. It's mind-blowing to me that somebody would pay money to listen to a podcast and watch a podcast, and you guys are doing it, and I'm forever grateful that you guys took a chance. So thank you very much. This episode's a solo episode. I'm sitting down alone. I'm not going to do too much in the intro here. But yeah, stay tuned. Here it comes, everybody.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's been a little bit since I've seen everybody, I guess. It's been a rough couple patches over here at the Audible Farm podcast. I do want to come in today and kind of talk to you guys a little bit about what's been going on. It's just been really difficult for me to schedule guests out lately, and I'm not 100% sure why. I know everyone has a life and things going on in their life that makes them choose to do the things that they want to do, and that's basically, I think, what's been the biggest issue in the podcast. I've had a guest-driven podcast for 4 years now, and it's been increasingly more difficult to find guests that are willing to come in and keep the schedule. And I do realize that I have like 6 people that have messaged me that want to be on the podcast that I did not respond to in the last month. But it's, like I said, it's just been difficult. I've made a lot of different schedules and a lot of different things for this podcast, and I do have a lot of stuff kind of going on in my life, generally speaking. I just try to stay as busy as possible so I don't just sit around and waste time, which is honestly like one of my biggest fears in life, is just wasting the time that I'm been given. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess if anybody has scheduled podcasts out with me, you know that my schedule's weird. I have just like a couple days a week that it'll work, and sometimes it's just a few hour windows on certain days that'll work during any given week. And I've been very grateful to every guest that I've had that has helped me work with me on my schedule to make this what it is. And it's really awesome that, we've got 200 plus episodes in here. I didn't look at the total tally of guests. It's probably 175 to 200 different guests have been on the podcast. And it's really cool to have all those different people, from venue owners to musicians to comedians to professional wrestlers and everything in between, join me. I've made a lot of really good friends. I've made a lot of really good acquaintances. And it's been really fun to be able to do this. And I think the toughest part about a lot of this is just coming down to the fact that I'm not sure I have the energy that's necessary to keep doing this. It's, like I said, it's just been kind of tough. If you've noticed, and I know a lot of people listen every single week, but it's been one of those things where, as of late, it's been more and more difficult to find people that will keep the schedules and keep their dates. And I'm not going to out anyone, but it's been a lot of people lately. So Since October, I think I've scheduled about 20 guests, and what we've gotten on the podcast is what we've gotten since then. So it's been a little slow here and there. It's been a little difficult for me to find time, and it's been a little difficult for all of us to kind of keep our schedules. So I think what might be the best opportunity now is possibly to just put the podcast on hold for a little bit and kind of see what happens. Audible Farm started originally as a YouTube channel that I was videotaping bands and editing their videos and putting them online. I would do live videos of bands. I'd record audio and video and mix it together and put it online. And a lot of those, I mean, it was all with band's permission and everything. And it was kind of fun doing that for a while. And then I thought, well, hey, why don't we talk to some of these people? So I started the podcast up 2018, started talking to people and really kind of got going through, just Iowa in general, all the bands I kind of interacted with through the different phases of my musical journey. Originally, I'd started with Three Finger Betty, a punk band out of Des Moines. So I did a lot of discussions with other punk bands and things like that. But I'm from the north central Iowa area, and I know a lot of musicians up in this area, so I blended a lot of them into it as well as kind of contacting venue owners and comedians and just basically anyone that I kind of ran into in my day-to-day playing music. As the podcast kind of grew and more of my friends had kind of come on and people I'd kind of met here or there, the guests kind of slowed down a little bit, I guess. It was tougher to find new people to be on the podcast. It was tougher to find people who were making an impact. And there's handfuls of people that are relatively, I want to say like Iowa famous, but relatively famous that chose not to be on the podcast. And that's, their prerogative, and that's just the way it is. So I feel like I've gotten quite a few of the musicians that were making a big impact over the years on the podcast to talk to them. I've interviewed people that are solo musicians, people who play in bands. It is kind of odd though to like have done the podcast and to have seen like a handful of guests. I did interviews with them, and then like within 2 weeks their band fell apart, and I was just really weird to see that kind of stuff happen. And it's not bad, it's just the way it works. It's unfortunate, that's how bands work. And it's unfortunate that's just kind of how life works. Not everything works out the way you want it to, but I guess, you know what? Everything does work out the way you want it to in the end, usually. So the unfortunate part about keeping all the schedules aside, I do want to say that, as far as like all the guests that have been on here, I originally started this, I wanted to catalog as many people as I could, trying to find a place of permanence on the internet for these people and their stories. And the graphic designer for this podcast, Brent Licata, passed away, and that was one of the first times the podcast really meant something to me. It was nice to have that there with him there. So it's been pretty difficult, I guess, just keeping schedules, kind of just seeing how life plays out and seeing how this means something to people, and also knowing that I'm, like I said earlier, I'm not 100% sure I'm the right person for the job. I'm not 100% sure I've got the energy to keep doing this anymore. So I've debated doing a rebrand. I've debated going on a hiatus. I've debated shutting it down permanently. I'm still not 100% sure what's going to happen with the podcast at this point in time. So what I do want to do is kind of talk about a topic that I guess it never really came up on this podcast, but it is something that has happened in one of the scenes I used to spend a lot of time in the pro wrestling scene, and that is the passing of Jason Strife. And for those that don't know, Jason Strife, his real name is Nathan Blodgett. He's a professional wrestler. He's, out of the Omaha-ish area. He has his own company, had his own company in Omaha, Magnum Wrestling. Been wrestling for well over a decade. He's roughly my age. And in my 20s, I went to a lot of professional wrestling events. I saw a lot of people wrestle, and Nathan was one of the really, really good ones. And Nathan fell ill this year and has recently passed away. And I guess it's just it's a really sad deal, and it kind of made me think about how important life is. In the last year, I've lost not a lot of friends, but I've lost a lot of people that are important to me in one fashion or another, I guess. You know, it's not like me and Nathan were best friends. I'd seen him wrestle. I'd talked to him. We were Facebook friends. And it's just a rough deal. But, you know, going back to my buddy Brent, who was graphic designer here, and all the relationships I have in my life that are not public, you know, and that are not on the podcast. You know, it's just been a difficult year. So what I believe I'm going to do is just put the podcast on hold for now. And I'm going to pause the Patreon because I'm not going to charge people money for something that's not going to exist. And as of late, the podcast has not really existed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the podcast on hold. I'm putting the Patreon on hold. Everything's still going to be there. You guys can still listen. You can go back through the back catalogs. You can find old episodes you liked. You can still contact me if you'd like. The Facebook and all the social media will still be there. I probably will not be as attentive with it as I was in the past, but it's all going to stay there for now. I've been talking with other podcasters, other people who are good at media in the state, trying to find the best way to keep this going in some fashion or another. But honestly, it's the end of 2022. I don't know if I have the answers. How this podcast made it through COVID, and for some reason, this year has just been so difficult to balance everything, especially closer to the end of the year. It's tough. It's just tough. So I guess without further ado, I just want to say that I'm really happy that this podcast was a thing. I don't think it's gone away forever. I just need to find a new way to go about doing this that will keep both myself, the listeners, and the possible guests engaged in the fashion that they once were. I know not everybody has the ability to look at the statistics on these kind of things, but the listenership has dropped about 70% this year, and I can't figure out why. I've tried to bring on other past guests that were big listens. I've tried to cover new topics and things like that. It just has not been working out the best. So I'm not 100% sure what's happening, but I do know that I don't necessarily make any money on this. So it's been very difficult for me to pour more and more time into this when I have like a full-time job and two other part-time jobs. So yeah, that's basically it. I don't want to ramble too much longer. This is just a short episode. There wasn't one yesterday when there was supposed to be. I made a little cryptic post on social media telling everyone to please stand by, and I think that's what's going to be there. So thank you guys all for listening to the podcast every week when you did. Thank you guys for supporting me when you did. The Audible Farm shop will still be available if anybody wants to buy any merch, or just hit me up. I'll cut you a deep discount on some stuff. I still have plenty of stuff. But yeah, that's where we're at. So once again, thanks everybody. I will be back in some capacity or another. We'll see you. And there it is. Episode number 218. Possibly the last one for a while. I want to say thanks once again to all the Patreon subscribers over the year. It's mind-blowing. Thank you guys very much for supporting me. I want to say thanks to everyone that's listened. It's been a slow couple last, half a year, but boy, oh boy, thank you guys very much. I really do appreciate everything you've done. I do appreciate all the support. I appreciate anyone that's ever bought merch, bought a sticker, stuck a sticker somewhere, anything. You guys are the heroes, and you guys are the reason I did this. And this isn't goodbye forever, but it's definitely a ta-ta for now. So thanks, everybody. I will check you guys out next time, whenever that may be. Peace.